Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Aaron Maté.
Well, for all of our advances in medicine, we turn now to a new book that calls for a radical transformation in how we approach the end of life. In his latest book, Dr. Atul Gawande argues that a rigid focus on prolonging life can often undermine what's best for a dying patient. Dr. Gawande writes, quote, "Medical science has rendered obsolete centuries of experience, tradition, and language about our mortality. And our reluctance to honestly examine the experience of aging and dying has increased the harm we inflict on people and denied them the basic comforts they most need."
The book is called Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End, by our guest, the physician and best-selling author, Dr. Atul Gawande, surgeon at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, staff writer at The New Yorker, professor at Harvard Medical School. This is his fourth book, with the others, The Checklist Manifesto, How to Get Things Right. I wanted to go to the first line of your introduction, Atul. You say, "I learned about a lot of things in medical school, but mortality wasn't one of them."
Yeah, we teach doctors how to try to save people. We teach very little about how we manage the realities of what we cannot fix. And the place we've ended up in is a health system that not only has the basic public health failures we described in the previous segment, but then this other failure, which is the ability to manage mortality. I have been a surgeon for more than a decade now in cancer surgery, taken care of a lot of people who've died, and could see that my own skills were inadequate for helping people navigate what is normal: denial, anxiety, the desire to have everything thrown at you. And there have been this series of studies that have brought home how badly this is going. A study at the Mass General Hospital is just one example. They took lung cancer patients, stage 4 cancer patients, who had on average just 11 months that they lived after the study started. Half of them got usual oncology care. The other half got usual oncology care, plus a palliative care physician who had discussions with them early in the course about what happens if and when things don't work out so well. The group who got the conversations ended up spending fewer days in the hospital, stopped chemotherapy earlier, went on to hospice sooner, had less suffering at the end of their lives, and they lived 25% longer. We're making bad decisions because we are unwilling as a profession and as families to begin earlier the discussions and planning for how we deal with end of life or just the aging process.
You profile many cases in your book where patients suffer because of an inability to reckon with death or a refusal to do so. I'm wondering if you can profile one of them for us, Sarah Thomas Maloney.
Yeah, Sarah Monopoly. So this was one that brought home to me. She was a 34-year-old woman who was diagnosed in her 8th month of pregnancy with metastatic lung cancer. I mean, this is as hard as you possibly can get. And she knew it was not curable. But you want treatments that can extend the time you had. She got her infant baby and wanted to spend as much time as she could with her new daughter, but she knew the end would come. We all had a plan that we would not have this end with, flogging her to the bitter end and having no quality of life in the end. And yet the train still went down that track. And I was part of that team and made that happen. What I found was that we had an inability to recognize and even ask questions about the fact that people have priorities besides just living longer. Priorities that include things like, well, I really care about whether my brain works as time goes on, whether I'm suffering with daily pain or not. The power that comes from the fact that we can have discussions was reflected to me in my own father's case, where he had a brain cancer in his brainstem and spinal cord. We had the conversations that I learned from palliative care physicians and others.
And explain when you say palliative care.
Yeah. So palliative care is the specialty that has evolved for how to make sure that people's well-being is preserved in the course of their life, especially when they have chronic illness or terminal illness. palliative care is often paired with hospice, where if you reach the stage where you're at the last 6 months of your life, you can be eligible to move into care that's really about having your best possible day today instead of sacrificing your time today for the sake of the future. So what the people in palliative care do is they just have some basic questions that we don't ask and never learned in medicine. Things like, tell me what your understanding of your condition is. Tell me what your fears and your worries are about the future. Tell me your goals if time becomes short. And tell me what outcomes are unacceptable to you. That was what we failed to ask Sarah Monopoly. But when we asked them for my father going through his brain cancer, that gave us the direction where we understood, what really mattered to him. He was a social person. He was a very active person, so he went through surgery to preserve that capability. But when chemotherapy started to take that away, that's when we stopped.